got a little bulkhead issue. So there again. Okay, today we're going to finish filling in, where are they? Right here, these holes. Now I've got a piece of foam cut for this one, and I've also got a piece of foam cut from this one, and it's going to go in on the back side. We're going to mix up a couple cups of resin. We're going to apply it with a brush. Now, I know you guys have seen people tell you all these different ways. Start with the small patch and go to the bigger. I actually follow the manufacturer's recommendation on all my fiberglass work, and I always start with the bigger patch and work my way smaller. I've actually repaired a few patches that started with the smaller and went to the bigger. The main reason is whenever you have the stress and the flex on it, they didn't have a good bond period. Now technically, should not matter whether you start with the small patch and go to the bigger, or start with the bigger patch and go to the smallest. So whenever I start out, I will go ahead and pre-make my patches that are going to go in, and I'll start with the biggest one and I'll size down, trying to get this one out of my hand to get to the next size down, and I will slowly size down until I get the void in the middle filled back out to the original surface. Now the reason I do this is because my strength is on this back piece, and it's just like this. If you reach over and grab here and pull up on your sleeve, well, this piece here is not as strong as if you had another piece here helping pull. So you get a little more strength that way. It's like tug of war. You don't want the strongest, biggest, heaviest guy on the front of the rope. You want him at the back. And then you want all the little binders out front. Just a theory that I have. But they have run extensive tests. They've proven that their method of putting the larger patch first works better. So I'm going to stick with it. I know a lot of people have all these other theories, but until they build a laboratory and start testing this product and seeing how strong and how long it'll last, I'm going to do it the way I was taught in 1975. Normally on most case scenarios, I try to mix all of my resin and everything on the side of the boat, so I'm not in the boat mixing. But in this particular scenario, I'm going to mix on a drop cloth, and I'm going to be in the boat because it's 12 steps down the ladder to get off this sailboat to get down to the bottom. And I brought all my material up in one box in an easy to handle system. So what I will do first, ready so that I can start me a mix area and protect the boat from spills. And it's pretty simple. It's just a tarp, cups, measure out. I know how many ounces goes in my cup, and then that gives me how many drops of hardener I need to add. And I will be using the little bubble buster roller on this one, and the brush, and I've taken a China bristle brush. I don't like synthetic brushes for doing this for the simple reason they always come out, and then you've got those synthetic hairs in your fiberglass work, and it won't chase the bubbles out. Whenever you cut this thing off to where you can see that it's about the width of my finger, so it's about 1.25 inches wide, is about all I leave on it. I leave it so it's a nice firm brush, and this is just going to be to pat and you're just making a gentle pat and moving away from the center, and that chases the bubbles. And what they do is they come up through the fabric. So as you pop on top, the bubbles come out, and you've chased the bubbles out, and you'll notice that dry spots start to look wet. And that's effectively what you want to do when doing a proper fiberglass repair. You want to be able to let this patch out so you can see. You can see through the glass. You can see my fingers right there. And that's just one layer right now. I'm actually going to be actually as thick, if not thicker, and then I'll grind it and smooth it, and I'll use, that's another video. And first things first, before you handle MEKP, it's always advisable to put them on, because this stuff can cause skin irritation in the form of a chemical burn. You'll notice it by the white spot that it leaves as it burns. It's just like touching a red hot stove. It'll just cook all the moisture out. Now, if you'll notice, I left some hardener in the bottom. Well, what happened is the temperature changed, it pushed it up and percolated out. So what I'm going to do is break the seal on this bottle and take this cup out, and I keep it in this brown box, and I keep it closed up. And you'll notice it's labeled properly, because that's what my gallon of hardener came in. And I'm simply going to pour this back into the bottle, because like I said, I'm only going to need a couple drops to make what I'm going to make in here. It won't take much, because 1% is what this manufacturer recommends for hardener. It's not a 1-to-1 like some of your cheaper resins will be. So this is a heavier resin per gallon than most resins you will come across. And I actually refill another can with my resin to keep my resin going. And the reason I do that is it's more convenient to pour it out of a cleaned out used gallon jug than it is to pour it out of a 5-gallon pail that I buy it in. And I buy it in bulk whenever I do buy it. And so far I don't have any sponsors. But if you call Composite One and tell them you saw Pop's Old Boats on YouTube to check them out, or check him out, meaning me, then they'll get you an account set up. And I never try to pour more into my container than I can use currently. And that's a problem a lot of people have, is they'll over mix their resin, and they'll wind up throwing a lot of resin away. For me, I would much rather go back and have to mix another container I waited a little late in the evening today. Wanted the temperature to get down just enough so that I can have a few extra minutes work time to do both of these. So what I'm going to do first is this starboard side. I'm going to go ahead and apply the glass to the back of this plug, and then I'll apply resin to to the back side interior of this hole, and I will press it together. And you have to get it on so that you have a clear resin setup. Forgive me for not turning it down to where you can see what I'm actually doing, because if I go messing with the camera now that I've got a little bit of resin on my gloves, I'll ruin my Samsung phone. Not sponsored by Samsung, but if they want to throw $1 or 3,000 at me, I won't turn it away. You'll be able to see me chase the bubbles out on this video towards the end when I get onto this port side hole. Looks good already. Now let's put a little bit inside the already hardened fiberglass. I'm using laminating glass. And the reason is so that if I have to stop, all I have to do is come back and add a little more resin, and I can keep on going the next day. Now I had put an arrow on the inside so that I could see when I put it in, which way's up. Now, with just a couple pieces of masking tape, I'll hold that plug in. And then whenever it comes time to glass the interior, I will simply add several coats of thickened resin with some ground up fiberglass in it, kind of like Cabasil or something of the nature. And I will make an application to fill in the little cracks, and I'll actually inject that. And to do that, I'll use a little bit larger hypodermic syringe and just squirt it in, and that makes a very good crack fill for the plugs that you put in. Now the reason I like these old cheap tarps is you mess them up, you haven't really lost anything. And I put them everywhere. And on every job I do, I go ahead and account that I'm going to use or lose 2 of these $12 tarps. And this keeps me from having a huge cleanup. Now, as you can see, my shop is well ventilated, but you don't want to hover over this stuff too long at a time. It can still cause asphyxiation. Getting a little messy here. Got a little acetone on the rag. That's another reason I wanted to wait till it cooled down, so my acetone didn't evaporate quicker than I could put it on. And actually it would be better if I was to brush up and stroke every time I brush, to brush up instead of down. But when you brush down, you will get more drips, but I'm trying to stay out of the way with the camera and everything. And that adds a little time to these jobs whenever you're trying to do it for YouTube. Because if I'm doing this over here instead of where I should be, which would be you staring at my butt crack, which doesn't make for a good video because I'm not sexy in a bikini. That's clickbait. So anyway, I've got a little resin on there. I'm gonna go over here to my largest patch. If I didn't mix them up, no I didn't, got it right. And the way I made the patch was I actually took the speaker that they put in, and what I did is I put the speaker on the fiberglass and just tore around the speaker, and then I moved it over a little bit and tore so that it wasn't quite as big, and then I flipped it over and actually used the magnet to get a few smaller pieces so that I could fill in the concave. Now this is going to go beyond the grind out area here, and it's actually going to hit some of the gel coat. It's not a problem. I'm going to grind that away. This is not going to be a section of the boat that is extremely stressed. And one thing that makes this area less stressed, let me center that. One of the things that makes it less stressed is the fact that the hole is a circle. It's not a perfect circle, but it has no cracks. So having no cracks and having a circle is about the most positive part you can have in fiberglass, because there's no stress, no way for it to crack and spread out. So there's one worry that you don't have whenever you're patching a little hole. And you'll look around where they put the depth finder in. There's no cracks leading out, so you have your holes, and that kind of prevents the stress that would normally be associated with if this were on the side of the boat, like on the McGregor where I'm going to grind out where it smashed the dock. Those are hairline cracks leading away from the damaged area. And that'll take a little more time to repair than this hole, which I just had to go around and make about a 2.5 to 3 inch circle around it. I'll say that's about 3 inches, 2.5. And I went through the layer of fiberglass, and I go 10 times out further than what the fiberglass is about all I'm doing here. So that you get a good bond. A mechanical bond is what you're looking for here on this fiberglass. I should have made this piece just a little bit bigger right there. I'm not happy with that. So this piece is going to be put aside for right now. I think I got the wrong patch. Yeah, this was my bigger patch right here. Yeah, that's the one bigger than the hole. So let's get that on there. So that's okay. That one's over there pre-wet. We'll get to it in a second. It won't take long, I hope. But that's the thing about it. I just put it on the cardboard box, and if it starts to set up, it can go on the ground. I don't have to worry about my chickens eating it. They've already told me they'd rather have corn than fiberglass. They'd rather have bugs than corn. So I'm just chasing the bubbles out, getting it wetted out. And I don't like wetting it out on a piece of cardboard and then bringing it up to the boat. Probably a lot of people will do it, but I'm not too happy with that method. Oops, talking, gotta run. Gotta run, gotta run, gotta run. That'll get it. Now they bind your fiberglass mat, your chopped strand matting. It's bonded with a styrene product similar to, I think it's similar to the white cups you drink out of. It's just a petroleum byproduct that makes styrene. And whenever you put the resin on it, what happens that makes you have the clear of the glass is the resin actually melts that styrene. Now that's why this foam that's used for the filler block is different. It's not made out of polystyrene the way cups are, because if it was, it would just melt whenever you touch to it your resin, and you would be left with a big cavity anyway. Now you can buy cartons, big cartons of this. I think it's 4x4. It might be 4x8. The foam boards from Composite One. And like I said, if you need to tell them who sent you, tell them Pop's Old Boats sent you. And I count. I don't get anything for it, but maybe they'll notice us and say, hey, we're not like Copper Coat. We don't have 1 million boat channels bragging about how much money we save on fiberglass. Put it this way, when I purchased my fiberglass resin, my hardener, my PVA, oh mercy, what all did I buy? I just put it this way, I probably got $2,000 worth of product if I'd have bought it from anybody else, and I got it for right at about $780. So you save a lot of money by going to this place. And when we're doing our own projects, then that's the main thing we're out for. We're out to save the buck or two. I think I picked the perfect time this evening to come out. It's pretty close to sunset right now. It's right over here behind my head. There's a little orange light coming up just at the front of the boat. Nice and pretty. And I've got my tarp out here for when I'm done. I'll cover up my work just in case any precipitation hits us tonight. And like I said, don't worry about these little crazy hairs that are up here sticking out, because you're just going to grind those off, turn a few of them back into it, give it a little extra strength if you want to. And by doing the wide part first, you're able to stretch this one and let it become tacky and firm, and that keeps you from having to use fairing compound or as much. I don't use any fairing compound. I actually raise the surface of my fiberglass with fiberglass and then flat sand it away. Then I will make a bonded grit for that so that I can gel coat right over it. Whenever I do the gel coat, I add the wax to the final coat only, and I'll build up my layers of gel coat until I get it back to where I feel it's as good, if not better, than what it was when it came out of the mold factory brand new. Now this area right here, it's not going to see a ton of wear. It's not like a floor, so it'll be a lot easier to do this little section here. If I can keep my fingers out of that stupid hair I've got hanging there, I'll quit peeling it up. And also, here's another trick. You can reuse these brushes. You can reuse them quite a few times. The trick is to get them extremely clean using your acetone and dry them out. Now, I never use the brush that I used on gel coat to go back to resin. Now, the reason is that gel coat will always bleed out. So what it'll make it look like is that you've got air bubbles trapped inside of your fiberglass, and you'll be sitting here doing work that's unnecessary. So we're going to go to the bubble chaser now, and simply this thing's got little ridges on it. Let's see if I can get it up there where you can see it. And what those do, they don't pop the bubbles. They press each piece down, and actually it just works it so that the bubbles are forced to the surface. It just gets it in there really good. Yeah, that's working pretty. It's taking out all them little tiny air bubbles. It just presses that little bit of glass matting down, and you'll actually see the resin start coming up, and it'll look like snot just adhering to your little roller here. We all had that kid in school that played with the snot. And I'm not talking about the one in the can. Now this will be a little more work over here on this on this port side, simply because it's got the outlet right here for the depth finder that they had installed on it. So I'll have to do a little detail work with a little Dremel tool there. Now I've got all my air bubbles out, and I just roll it just a little more, and it's not a fast roll. You're just kind of slowly massaging these bubbles out. That's all you're doing. There's a little tiny one right there, got it. Now, the way I can tell I've got the bubbles out is when you can see through it. And once you can see through it, your bubbles are pretty much out. Kind of pressed it in a little bit too deep. Bring it back up. Make it adhere better. There we go. Okay, now that's done. Now I've got a little bit of resin left. So what I'm going to do is take this patch right here. I'm going to check it. It's still wet. It's not hot. I'm going to go ahead and get that on here too. I'm trying not to hit too hard because I just had to push my plug back through. I kind of stuck my sticky hands on the mat and pulled some of it apart, so it made it kind of ugly, but that's okay. It's like what Bob Ross used to say, it's just happy accidents. When you're working with glass, it's very forgiving, as long as you don't put it in your eyes. But the thing about glass is it's so much stronger. And now this chopped strand, even hand laid the way I'm hand laying it, is going to be stronger than if it were sprayed. The sprayed has been showing that it has more resin than glass. So you wind up with a strong vessel, but not as strong as if it were 100% hand-laid fiberglass. So the older boats, in my opinion, they're heavier. They might be a little slower, but you can run over one of these newer boats and cut it in half with an older boat like this one. Because back in the day, they thought they had to be as thick with fiberglass as they did with wood. Now I'm sure I'll edit a few minutes out of this because we're about 30 minutes in right now, just me plugging on these holes. And
I'm pretty much, you see how much faster the second little patch goes. Maybe if I'd have got out here an hour earlier, I could have laid 3 more on it, but I don't like to do that many at one time. I like to build it up slowly, make sure what I'm doing is accurate. And you see, my face is almost gone out of camera spot now. So, I'd like to thank you guys for viewing. Leave me a comment, say hello. And if you didn't know already, I've acquired some YouTube fame as followers now. 3 people as a matter, well, 3 individuals, I should say. Bo, Brandy, and Una now follow me. And you know, that's YouTube fame. I love that. That's really getting somewhere in life. That's an accomplishment. And I'll just sit here and go around the circle now, chasing those little tiny, tiny air bubbles out. And I'm just tapping it with the very tip of the bristles. And I can see the resin really coming to the surface. And all the bubbles just vanish as I go around it. And I can see through it. And I've got a little more light here than it actually looks like on camera. See? And as you'll notice, maybe you can, the lines that are in the board going up and down through the second coat, you can see them still. Now I'm going to come around this side and go down to the 6 o'clock. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start down here where I stopped at about 8 o'clock. And I'm talking about if this were a clock, 12, 3, 6, 7. And I'm just going to come around and finish chasing those bubbles so you can see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to tilt it a little bit toward me so that you can see, and I can see under when I have a bubble left that I need to chase out. Now I went back twice for that bubble. Turns out it's the gel coat shining through it. So I'm just going to keep on coming around just like that. Yeah, that's a 2-inch brush, so I guess I ground out 2 inches. And you can use your bubble roller, but today I'm at the point where I'm going to turn over to this side and put a coat on this side here. I'm going to put a piece here under the light, and that's a night. And like I've already asked you, click that subscribe button, follow us, leave me a thumbs up, you know. Hey, if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down, but tell me why you didn't like it. Thanks for viewing. Welcome aboard, everybody.